that Atlanta Falcons radio show. So get up, get out, and get something. Get in the zone. We live on the DT. Tune in, cause we about to blow like TNT. Falcons Central Radio show. Gonna be berserk, you heard. We ain't even tripping, catching y'all slipping. What's good, man? On the Pro Football Central Radio Network, hosted by Aaron Freeman and Scott Carasik. What? This right here is a good present for you. Enjoy my presence like I was Santa Claus, man. Chillin', doing it.
Welcome back to Falcons Central Radio Show. I am Aaron Freeman, joined with my co-host Scott Carasik. And today we are on with our good friend Tom Melton. Tom is a writer for Draft Falcons. He is a former writer for NFL Draft Monsters. Today we are going to talk about training camp. We're going to talk about some of the Falcons' rookie players. And it should be a fun show.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
Welcome to the show. And, for those that don't know, Tom is the director of scouting.
No.
He's got a big fancy position at Draft Falcons.
I'm sorry I left that out. Yeah.
Tom's awesome. He knows his rookies. He knows his, well, not rookies, but he knows his draft prospects probably better than anybody else. And now those draft prospects are your rookies. So, jumping right into it. As a Midwesterner, Tom, Martell Moore, I'm hearing he's having this great camp. Would that shock you or no? Based on what you saw of him as a senior.
No. I actually did an interview with Chandler Harnish a couple years back, and so he mentioned Martell Moore to me way back then as a guy to keep an eye on. I didn't really know if he would get drafted because I didn't think he was going to run that well. He's got really good hands, very good body control. He makes some tough catches look easy. I thought he was a pretty solid route runner, so I thought that he might get a chance as an undrafted free agent, kind of flying under the radar, and seems like he's making the most of it with the Falcons. That makes me happy. I'm sure Chandler's happy about it as well.
Sounds great. Yeah, Scott previously predicted on one of our previous shows when we were talking about predicting who's going to make the roster. He had originally had Tim Toon, but then Tim Toon got cut like a few days later, and then you basically replaced him with Martell Moore. And so I'm sure Scott is patting himself on the back over some of the success, or at least the buzz that we're hearing about more early on in camp.
Well, that's good. Yeah. I hope he makes the team too.
Yeah.
I hope so too. He exploded in the Orange Bowl, and that was kind of the first time I was like, you know what, I need to go watch some tape on this guy. And sometimes that's all it takes for a team too, is be like, hold on, this guy just had 100 yards against Florida State. There's something here.
Yep.
When it comes to a rookie to look out for this year, that's, fourth round or later, who do you think fans should be looking out for?
Are you talking just Falcons, or are we talking anybody?
We can do both.
Okay. Did you say third round or later?
Fourth round or later.
Fourth round or later? I guess you got to say Malachi Goodman. That's got to be one that everybody's got to know, the defensive end from Clemson. I'm sure most people do, since he's probably going to be figuring in pretty significantly into the left end rotation. I don't know exactly how he's been doing so far in camp. Hopefully he's been doing well. But I liked him. Not everyone else liked him. He has freakishly long arms, first of all. He has extremely long arms, good frame. He looks like I thought he looked like a solid left end prospect to me. I didn't think he was going to be a stud pass rusher in the NFL, so I was a little disappointed that we didn't get a stud pass rusher necessarily. But I think he's a good run defender. I don't think he's going to be, a 10-sack guy that could kind of replace Abraham, but I think he can be a reliable run defender and probably work pretty significantly into the defensive end rotation. Maybe not a ton this year, but during his career with us.
Yeah, I've been hearing some positive word about Malachi Goodman early on in camp. You know, people
What,
do like
what have
his
you been hearing?
upside. Well, just that he's been using those freakishly long arms to be effective against some of the I guess backup offensive linemen. So he looks like he's I guess on schedule for being that role player that you were just talking about.
Okay, that's good to hear. Um, Let me think. I guess Levine Toilolo, however you pronounce his name, I've never been good at it. I liked him a little bit at Stanford. I thought he had a lot of upside, but I was kind of surprised that he declared this year. I thought he would probably stick around and kind of polish his game a little bit, but on the plus side now, he can kind of learn from Tony Gonzalez. And as I've told you, Aaron, on the podcast that you guys had me on, I'm hoping that he just follows Tony Gonzalez around all the time and picks up every little thing that he possibly can. Because the more he learns from Tony Gonzalez, the better off he's going to be. And if Tony Gonzalez mentors him, then he could turn into be a very good tight end for us. So I'm excited that we have a developmental guy there now because I've been begging for one for Tony to mentor ever since we got him. So I'm excited about him. So I don't know if he's going to have a big impact this year, but hopefully he'll learn a lot from Gonzalez while he has the chance.
I can agree with that one. I'm with you on I wanted somebody for Tony to mentor for years because it was like, hey, we got Tony Gonzalez and he's 35 years old now. Now he's like almost 40 and he's only got so many years left. He's got to, well, now we know he's only got 1 year left, but he's got to develop a couple guys. And I think Chase Kaufman could be another guy that Tony's developing. I just think he started his development of him 3 years too late.
Yeah, I agree. I've been saying the exact same thing. So, I'm just glad we got 1 year, but, I would have preferred 2 or 3 if I could have had it, but, that's a perfect world, so.
Yeah, I was a little disappointed with that stacked 2010 class. The best the Falcons came up with was Michael Palmer. Nothing against Michael Palmer, but he paled in comparison to some of the great tight end prospects, and that would have been the perfect year to kind of pounce on some guy that we could have developed over the last couple of years.
Yeah. A couple other rookies that I liked. I know we just picked up Marcus Sales from Syracuse. I liked him. I didn't love him. I thought he was solid. He had some concentration drops, but he looked like he was a pretty good route runner, and when he focuses, he has pretty good hands. So I'm not sure if he's going to outperform Martell Moore as kind of that undrafted wide receiver guy that's catching eyes, but I think maybe he has a chance to get on the practice squad either here or somewhere else. I thought he might go undrafted, but I thought he might catch on a little sooner than when we just picked him up. And I like Stanley Mapunga. I was kind of surprised that he declared this year and that he played as far as he did. I'm really hoping he can provide like a rotational pass rush boost as a rookie and while he's on his rookie deal. I don't know what you guys think of him, but I liked him. I didn't think he was going to be a stud necessarily, but we got him in the 7th round, so I'm happy with that.
Mm-hmm. Do you think he can, I've been hearing a lot of talk about the Falcons, doing that cross-training stuff where they're playing some of their DNs more as like an outside linebacker, asking them to stand up. Do you think Mapanga is a good fit for that sort of role, or do you think he's better off, being more of a hand in the dirt type of edge rusher?
I think he can do it. I don't think he's necessarily going to thrive in that aspect. I think Mike Nolan will kind of like want to use him to do that occasionally. I don't think he's going to want to have him do that all the time. I've seen him drop into coverage, and he looked comfortable with it. He didn't look like he was, a natural 4-3 linebacker, you know what I mean? But I thought he looked a little more explosive when he had his hand in the dirt. Obviously, that was just my opinion. I don't know if Scott has a different feeling on that. But I thought he was probably better off being a 4-3 defensive end than trying to move to the outside linebacker. But once again, that was just me.
I'm right there with you on Mapanga. I think he's a straight 4-3 defensive end, probably right end. As far as, your typical build, the right end's the speed end. So I think that's probably his best role long term. But I could easily see him. I could see him play the left side if the team is needing that. Absolutely needing that. But I think he's mainly a right end.
I agree.
Just another quick question on that, and Scott, if you want to weigh in on this, be my guest. But, with the Falcons sort of using Corey Bierman as this kind of joker type of player, playing him all over, putting him at linebacker, between Mapanga and, say, Massaquoi, which of those two players do you think probably projects maybe, a year or two down the road could possibly take over for Bierman in that role? Between Massaquoi and Mapanga. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'd probably say Massaquoi just because I think he has higher upside than Mapanga does. I think that Massaquoi, we've talked about this too before, Aaron, that 2011 year, he really showed a lot of talent, and I thought he was going to end up being a first, second, or third round pick. And then he kind of disappointed. He was a little bulked up as a junior in his 2012 year. And I thought that he lost some explosiveness and he wasn't the same player. And, if he's supposedly down to a better weight, closer to when he was, in 2011, then I think he has a lot more upside than a guy like Mapanga does. I think Mapanga has like an upside as a rotational rusher, not necessarily as a starter or a high-end starter. Bierman's kind of the guy that he's been a pretty solid starter, but he's not going to be great. And I think that Mapanga kind of falls into like he's a better rotational guy than a starter. I think Massaquoi is starting upside if he can get to that same level from 2011, but obviously that's kind of a hope and a prayer at this point since it's been such a long time.
Okay.
Because every report out there says that, Massaquoi's the guy. Even a lot of the stuff that I've been reading from Knox Bardeen, who's at camp all week, and John Manassa, they've been saying that he's the one that's really stood out of all of the defensive ends. So I hope Massaquoi does. I was going to say, go ahead.
That's really good to hear if Massaquoi is the one that's stepping up.
Because, I agree with you. I think he's probably the best fit long term, as long as he stays around that 265, not 265, but like 259 to 263. If he gets any bigger than that, I feel like he's probably going to be too big, and he's just not going to have that oomph, if you will.
Yeah, I agree.
So
another undrafted guy I've been hearing some buzz on is Ryan Schrader. Scott and I both kind of projected him to be, the ninth man on the offensive line rotation, possibly being the backup left tackle if Lamar Holmes and Mike Johnson are playing on the right side. And I think it was Knox Bardeen, but he was one of the people that says Schrader has been really impressive. Tom, do you have any opinion on Schrader or any of the other backup rookie offensive linemen?
Unfortunately, I have not seen anything of Schrader. Didn't he go to Valdosta State or something?
He did.
I never got to see him, unfortunately. Of all the backup rookie offensive linemen, I've seen a little bit. Didn't we signed Matt Smith from Kentucky, didn't we?
Correct.
We did.
I don't know if he'll make the roster necessarily, but he was solid. I was just doing a Kentucky preview, so I was watching him. I had seen him a little bit before that, but not much. He seems solid. I'm not really surprised that he went undrafted necessarily, but I think maybe he has a chance at maybe he has a chance to make the roster. Maybe as a practice squad guy. I haven't seen how he's done in camp, obviously, but he's like 6'3" or 6'4" through his pounds, so he's got a chance, but I don't think he's going to be able to outperform Cons or Holly or anyone at center. So solid, but I'm glad that Schrader's looking good.
So this may be one of those those arguments that you don't want to get in the middle of, but you're probably going to end up doing. I've been saying for years that I think Joe Hawley is going to be the starting center. And it looks like for most of camp, they've actually been giving him a legitimate shot as opposed to just handing it to Collins and saying, hey, Collins, it's your job to lose. It looks like they're actually splitting snaps at center when you at least see the Vine videos that they've been posting. Do you think that it's a legitimate battle? Do you think Hawley could possibly win it?
I mean, I was a big Cons fan coming out of Wisconsin. I mean, I live in Wisconsin right now, and I've seen him play live a lot, and I know people in the program. So, you know, I had very high expectations for him coming out. Was really happy when we drafted him because I thought he was going to end up going first round. So I'm probably very biased on this, but I would like to see Collins win the job. I think he's got a lot higher upside than Hawley does. But, you know, at the end of the day, you know, it's about who plays better, you know, in camp and who can actually translate that upside onto the field. And if Hawley's looking better in camp, then he should play. And if Collins is that guy, then, you know, they should let him play. I don't know if it's going to be wide open or not. I don't know enough about what the coaches think of each of them to say whether it's a real battle or whether they just want to get a fair look at both of them, but give the job to Collins. But, you know, if I had to guess, I'd say Collins would be the starter, but obviously I'm speaking from a point of ignorance and bias since I prefer Collins as a high upside starter, so that's just me.
The right guard situation. Again, one of those spots where I feel like I feel like the Falcons have probably four or five qualified guys who could compete for it, but it's going to end up going to the wrong guy and Garrett Reynolds, because I am not a Garrett Reynolds fan. In case you have not noticed by any of my writing, I don't think he's good. I think at best he's a backup level guy, and that's what he is in the NFL.
Gee!
I mean, I'm just saying, that's what I think he is. Do you think that if, say, Mike Johnson runs away with the right tackle job, or Peter Collins runs away with the center job, that they should go with a Lamar Holmes, Joe Hawley, whoever wins it at right guard?
Is Mike Johnson leading the right tackle battle right now, just out of curiosity?
He is.
He is?
By far,
okay.
Apparently.
Okay. I'm not sure how much I liked Holmes inside at right guard. I thought he looks like maybe a right tackle only. He's tall, so he's going to have some leverage problems, just like Garrett Reynolds does when he's playing inside. I am not a Garrett Reynolds fan either, and that is coming from me as a University of North Carolina Tar Heels fan. I think he is a backup as well. I do not want to see him starting at right guard because every time I've seen him play there, he has gotten manhandled. So I do not want him starting at right guard. I would prefer having Collins at center and Hawley at right guard to having Garrett Reynolds at right guard. I haven't seen Holmes play at right guard, so I can't necessarily say that he would be better or worse than Hawley, but I would prefer it to not be Reynolds. And in my ideal world, that is not what the Falcons live in. I would like Johnson in at right guard and Holmes at tackle, but, you know, that's clearly not what's going to happen, so, you know, we've got to deal with that. I've got to learn to deal with that, so that's just my opinion.
That is pretty much exactly where I'm at. I want to see Hawley on the field because I feel like he's earned it. I feel like he's earned it. I feel like he's a better player. But if Johnson moved to right guard, that would be great. But it looks like he's gonna run away with the right tackle spot, which finally, finally he's doing something.
Yep, we've been waiting for that for a while since he went in the third round. So, yeah, I'm excited just to see him stepping it up at all.
Okay. Yeah, I think we all can, or maybe Scott might put Hawley in the mix, but I think most of us would agree that probably the best five include probably Holmes and Johnson potentially. So I think we all agree that we want to see the best five starting, and I don't think anybody considers Garrett Reynolds to be among that group. Let's switch over to defense. Much has been made about the competition at cornerback with Desmond Trufant and Robert Alford. Based off what I've been reading and a little bit of what I've been seeing, I think it seems like there's a bit more buzz for Robert Alford than Trufant, but we'll see how that plays out in the coming weeks. Certainly, preseason will determine that. Tom, where are your thought processes on? Are you surprised by the fact that maybe Alford might be having a slightly better start to camp? Is it because he got more work in OTAs? Is it because he's a better player, or where do you weigh in on that possibility?
Well, for one thing, he's older than Trufant. Isn't Alford like 24 years old? I think he's a couple of years older than Trufant. So just from a pure football experience standpoint, I think he has a little bit of an edge there. But there were a number of people on Twitter that were more excited about us getting Alford in the second round than getting Trufant in the first round, especially because we had to trade up to get Trufant, which I've seen Scott discussing that on Twitter before, and I was not a fan of that at all. But I was not a huge Trufant fan. I wouldn't have been as mad about it if we had just stayed in our spot and gotten him. But trading up and getting him is kind of disappointing. But that's just me, obviously. But getting Alford in the second round, I wasn't crazy about Alford either, but he offers some talent as a punt returner. He's got good ball skills. So, I'm not surprised to see him making some pass deflections in camp that I've been seeing show up on Twitter and everything. I would be a little surprised if he ended up walking down the job just because the Falcons picked Trufant in the first round for a reason, and they clearly thought he was a better player. But, I'm not going to rule out Alford surprising either. So I would expect Trufant to be the starter opposite Samuel, but that's obviously me speaking from a draft analyst point of view and not actually seeing how they are doing in camp every day.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like Trufant. I'm probably one of the few guys who's like, yeah, Trufant probably shouldn't start this year. He should probably compete for nickel. Because I think Alford is a better long-term option at right corner. Trufant, let him learn behind Samuel on the left side and then have Alford at the right corner and then have McClain, just give McClain the nickel. He deserves it, But if McClain earns a starting spot, give it to him too.
I agree.
Yeah, the way I kind of view both players. I think Trufant might have had a slightly higher floor than Alford, but I do think Alford's ceiling might be a little bit higher long term. I was a little bit more impressed with Alford's athleticism, even though Trufant did kind of tear up the combine. One of the issues the Falcons are potentially facing is there have been question marks about their depth at linebacker. They have a lot of young guys at that position, Brian Banks, Pat Schiller. They have 3 undrafted rookies in Joplo Bartu, Nick Clancy, and Paul Worlow. Scott has been a firm backer of Paul Worlow on past episodes of this show. When he's allowed me to speak in between his Worlow love fest, I've been pounding the table for my boy, Pat Schiller. Are there any of these linebackers that you feel could step up and potentially, earn a roster spot? And, there's been some recent buzz about the possibility that maybe a player like Stephen Nicholas might be in fear for his job. And are any of these guys, do you feel, are good enough to possibly, take Nicholas's job right out from under him?
I personally don't think Nicholas is going to lose his job unless he kind of continues to underwhelm and the Falcons just decide to cut him and plug and play with the best they can if they don't really think he's that valuable of a commodity. I'm not sure how likely that is since I haven't seen him playing in camp and everything. I think the guy, whether it's biased or not, that I'm most excited about is Brian Banks, just because his story is so incredible. And I'm just so excited for him to have this opportunity at all. And he clearly is planning very intently on making the most of it. And so it's just hard for me to root for anyone else in the linebacker core more than Brian Banks, because I just want him to make the team, and you're not going to, have to worry about him working hard, I don't think. I think he's just so happy to be here and to have a chance that he's going to play his tail off. So I'm hoping that he can, make an impact on the special teams, catch the coach's eye somehow, and, stick around and learn, because I think that, he was a good football player before he had to go to jail. So I'm hoping he can kind of recapture that. I don't know if you guys have heard about how he's doing in camp. Hopefully he's doing well, but he's one guy I'm really rooting for.
The buzz I've heard on Banks was I think they were talking to the linebackers coach Glenn Pyers the other day, and he basically was saying that Banks was probably about where he needed to be, or where he was expecting him to be as far as his development, considering that, it's been a long time. Other than his UFL experience, he hasn't really played quote-unquote real football for a decade. So I think they kind of expected going into it that he would be a little bit rusty, a little bit raw. But I think they're pretty happy with where he's at right now.
That's very good to hear.
I've heard he was throwing people around. He was taking out some of the anger that he built up from 10 years in jail on the field. From what a couple of people said. They said when he was engaging in blocks, he was just throwing the guy to the side. And when he was getting into the, when he was actually hitting the running back, he was delivering a good wallop. Which, that's exactly what you want a linebacker to do. Especially a guy who's going to play thumper in the middle.
That is awesome. That is awesome.
No insight on any of the other backup linebackers, Tom?
Unfortunately, I do not. I know you're a Schiller fan, so you definitely are more familiar with him than I am, but I haven't scouted any of those guys specifically.
Okay. Well, I'm apparently the Falcons' Northern Illinois pipeline is doing pretty well. Pat Schiller, Martell Moore.
It definitely sounds
Michael
like
Turner.
Yeah, there you go.
I mean, come on.
If we can get Larry English, we'll complete the set, I guess.
Yeah, but we don't want Larry English.
Yeah, I know. I can only think of one other Northern Illinois player, and that was Larry English.
That's like saying, hey, let's bring in Sean Merriman.
Hey, how about Vernon Golston? We love busts at defensive end, I guess. I don't know.
Find Jamarcus Russell, get some tight end or offensive guard depth.
Hey, Jamarcus Russell would be a great tight end.
Jamarcus Russell has actually lost about 50 pounds. He's only 265. I'm with the defensive end idea. 6'5".
Let's see what kind of burst he has off the edge.
I mean, who knows? Hey, it may sound crazy, but some of these guys, you take them, you give them that second chance, and you just say, hey, you're listening to me. This is where you're playing. Some of them, they might surprise. Be like, all right, I'll play defensive end. I'm 6'5", 265 pounds. I'm a prototypical size. I mean, he should have been converted a long time ago because he never had a pro potential career as a quarterback with his work ethic. But
honestly, I may be the only person that is a Falcons fan that thinks this, but I really have no problem with the Falcons saying, you know what, Sean Merriman, here's a tryout. Let's see if you're healthy. I have zero problem with that. And I think everyone else thinks it's just a joke. But I'm like, you know what? If he somehow got healthy and no one else knows about it and we can get like a decent pass rusher out of this for no money, that doesn't sound like a problem to me. I would totally kick the tires on it just to see what happens. If he can't play, then you know what? You got to try out, and we saw it, and it was not impressive. If not, then we get a pass rusher. I don't understand why it's such a ridiculous thing to even consider. But, that's just me.
I think it's more that he's washed up and retired, and if he did come back, he's technically under contract with the Bills still. I believe so. So I think it's got a lot to do with that, but you never know. I mean, if he could somehow come back and be lights out again, I doubt because of his multiple injuries. If he could have done it, it would have been last year. He would have started at right end, and that line would have been beastly. of Merriman, Williams, and Darius.
Darius. Yep.
That would have been a nasty line if all the players played up to their name.
Yeah, I would have been for kicking Merriman's tires probably 2 years ago, but basically he did next to nothing in Buffalo, and so basically I think that was the final straw. So I'm pretty much good with how his career ended, and I don't need to see him try to run around to try to make the Falcons team, because I don't think it's going to happen.
Fair enough. I realize I'm in the extreme minority on that, so I do not take offense to any of that.
I like to call it Ray Edwards shell shock. Because same kind of guy, same kind of personality, same kind of, had pass rush skill for a little bit, but it was on the line, and, one case was steroids, one case was, a really good defensive line around him. But either way, neither one would ever come close to living up to their expectations after those seasons or after the event that changed them. For the last 2 years, they gave almost identical production, which is the sad thing. It's sad, but it's true. And what's sad is that production was still more than what Jamal Anderson gave Atlanta for.
I was just gonna take a shot, but I wasn't gonna do it. But you pulled the trigger, and I
had to, man. Jamal Anderson was Ray Edwards with a draft pick with a draft pick attached.
If we're gonna talk mess,
and we could have gotten Patrick Willis.
Let's talk mess about Pariah Jerry, because I'm so tired of him being on this team. I can't handle it anymore. The fact that I realize this is not as simple and black and white as I want it to be, but the fact that we cut John Abraham and kept Pariah Jerry is infuriating to me.
You know what's even more infuriating? Literally. Look at the Falcons cap space right now.
I don't want to, because we should have Richard Seymour on our roster.
$7 million. I think that give it 2 weeks. I think Atlanta will have Richard Seymour on its roster at some point.
Okay, good. That encourages me.
Because despite what Dimitroff is saying, I guarantee you they talk to his agent quite a bit. And I'm sure it comes up in conversation. Hey, Tommy, let's get Richard on your team. You only won $6 million. You only got $7 million in cap. The math adds up. He'll fit. I'm still waiting on these Ryan details, though.
Yeah, I'm hoping that happens.
It should happen, because if it does happen, it won't be $1 million in cap. They'll just cut Jerry, and it'll be $2 million in cap. That's all you really need.
You know what? I would rather have the cap space from Jerry than to have him on the roster. Seriously. I don't even care if we sign Richard Seymour. I would rather just cut Jerry for any reason.
I would have rather kept Vance Walker and cut Jerry.
Yeah. Yes. I would have rather cut Pariah Jerry and, made myself a peanut butter sandwich. But of course I would like to have Vance Walker, and of course I'd like to have Richard Seymour too. The fact that Jerry's on this roster and Vance Walker isn't, and John Abraham isn't, is just, mind-boggling to me. Absolutely mind. It's like someone made a bet with Thomas Dimitroff that he can't keep him for the entire rookie contract. He's like, I'm going to win that bet. You're going to look like a fool. That is literally the only reasonable explanation I could come up with for why he's still on the team.
Yeah, pretty much. I would love to...
I racked my brain over this, Scott. That's all I've got.
I mean, I would love to have seen... Well, here's the good thing. 2014 comes around. Jonathan Babin is not under contract anymore. Pariah Jerry's not under contract anymore. But Vance Walker is also going to be a free agent. I'm just saying, maybe Vance wants to be a starter for a year in Oakland, and then he's going to come back. It's not like he left. It's not like he burned any bridges when he left.
Yep.
Yeah. I don't see Jerry making the team. I think the cap savings will be too enticing for the Falcons, especially given the fact that he's not going to be on the team beyond this year. And I think you can find somebody for half the price that can do just as much that Jerry can do. It would be unfathomable to me. I think I don't share your level of anger right now, Tom, but if we are here in September 8th or whatever, and he's still on the team, I think I'll be twice as mad, if not 10 times as mad as you are right now about that. I just can't see it happening.
Yeah, good. I'm glad we're on the same page with that. Here's actually one thing I want to briefly discuss. I remember we were talking about Hamilton, the defensive line coach, on the last podcast. I want to know if Scott thinks he could start being held accountable for not developing our young pass rushers any better, because I'm not that impressed with what he's done with the talent we've given him. I think Dimitrov catches a lot of heat for that, but I think his position coach has to be held accountable for some of that as well.
I've said for years that Hamilton can develop defensive tackles, but he cannot do defensive ends. And if you go through the history, if you go look and see what he's been able to do, Corey Peters has developed pretty nicely. You know, Babineau got better when 2008 hit. So, I mean, when Hamilton came in, you know, Jerry didn't develop, but I feel like had Jerry not had that knee injury his rookie year, he could have been a lot better than he is now. And when you look at Vance Walker as a 7th-round pick being what he was, like, granted, I had a 3rd-round grade on him, so I thought he was a huge steal, and he kind of was. For a 7th-round pick to be that much of a contributor for 4 years, he was almost always on the field for 4 years. Like, he was the 3rd defensive end for 4 years. For a 7th-round pick, that's a hell of a selection. No matter what team you're on. If you got a guy who's playing 50% of your snaps, and you picked him in the 7th round, and he does it for 4 years, I mean, then he leaves and goes and becomes a starter elsewhere, it's still a great pick. It's not even close to a bust, but of course you'll have people who don't know the draft say that, oh, he's a 7th-round pick, he's not with the team anymore, he's a bust. No. Get out of here with that crap. He's a hell of... They are. They're going to start him. He's running with their first team right now.
I'm not surprised by that at all.
He's their starting under tackle. They were going to move Lamar Houston inside, and then they were like, you know what, we really like this guy. And Houston's like, cool, I can stay it in. And Pat Sims is their starting 1 tech. 3 guys Exactly. 3 guys who could have all started on any team in the league, but because they were on, you know, the Bengals and the Falcons respectively, they were just at logjam spots.
That's a very good point. That's a very interesting point because, you know, I was trying to rationalize, like, why was he developing defensive tackles? But it seems like you're right. He does develop defensive tackles, but he can't figure out defensive ends.
Which is why I think Chuck Smith, just hire him already, like, seriously. He already runs...
Oh, my God, I agree.
He's a Falcon. Hell, if John Abraham, when he's done in Arizona, if he wants to come back and be the defensive end coach, just do it. Just give him $500,000 a year, say you're the defensive end coach, and call it. And I guarantee you Abraham would gladly come back. I've actually spoken to his sister who said, yeah, when he retires, he'd love to do it. Just do it. Just bring in somebody who understands how to play the defensive end position and teach these guys how to play the defensive end position, especially if it's Chuck Smith, because he's friggin' Chuck Smith.
I would be all for that.
Well, Tom, it was great having you on. I believe people can find you on Twitter at T Melton Scouting. I know that you're, Scott gave you a fancy title for Draft Falcons. Are you, blogging for anybody else? Are you still blogging on your own website?
Yep, still blogging at Tom Melton's NFL Draft blog, but doing all my main writing at Draft Falcons. So you can catch me there or at my blog.
And if people were curious what other podcast Tom was referring to, he was referring to the podcast that he was on FalconsCentralRadio, which I happen to also be on. He was on in late March and I believe early July, I guess. And some of the things he was referring to that he was talking about. So, of course, people, by all means, go to FalconsCentralRadio and check that out. But
sir, always a good podcast.
Yeah, always fun. Yeah, especially when Tom brings his best Dante Robinson material.
Hey, I did not mention once this entire podcast. That is not my fault. I kept it professional this whole time. So I didn't even go on a Jason Snelling rant. I kept myself in control.
Yeah.
Jason Snelling rant?
Yeah, he has previously expressed his love for Jason Snelling.
Oh, okay.
He
I was
should have
like,
started the last 2 years. He should have been the starter. That is my opinion of Jason Snelling.
it's hard to disagree, actually.
Yeah, exactly, Scott. Go listen to the podcast when I rant about Jason Snelling. I've never heard Aaron laugh that hard in my whole life because we were talking about it. I was like, yeah, it's so weird that when he gets the ball, he gains yards and does good things with it. And it's just like, it's so obvious. Why weren't we just giving him the ball? He was versatile. He can catch the ball in the backfield. He can run the ball effectively. I just don't understand. He can block too if we want.
He's not a breakaway kind of guy, but I mean, he'll get 15 yards.
He's better than Turner. Fast.
He's gonna get he'll get 4 to 6 yards every play. That's Jason Snelling.
Exactly.
That's all you needed, though. And he can catch, which is always great. I agree. I agree. But I also think that Mike Mularkey should have been fired back in 2009.
Fair enough.
Not like the Falcons would have been able to get Cutter, but I still can't believe how many people were like, oh, that's a horrible hire. Jaguars. Yeah. It's like, he had Blaine Gabbert. Of course it was going to look like a shitty offense.
Yeah. Whatever, it happens.
Oh, man. Sorry. I'm just laughing because it's Blaine Gabbert. He is Joey Harrington Part 2.
Pains me to say that, but you're probably right.
And I liked him coming out of college, but
me too. That's why it's so hard for me to admit that I'm wrong.
He was my highest rated 2011 quarterback.
Same here. And I feel like a complete moron for that.
However,
yeah, I'm in the same boat too.
However, I had Kaepernick at 2. So.
Well played on that. I did not.
Anyway, that's a whole other discussion.
That is an entire other podcast, but still.
It really is. Anyway, it was great having you on, Tom. Aaron, do you have any more questions?
I'm good. I'm looking forward to the next time we can have Tom on. Hopefully, we can talk some more about draft and rookies and all that type of stuff.
Yeah, man, I'm happy to come back on. It was fun having a conversation with you guys. This was a good podcast.
Football fans, looking to get healthy this year? Now is the time, and I have the perfect place for you. Save 10% at onit.com/football radio. Exclusive PFC radio listeners save 10% off their order. That's onit.com, ONNIT.com/football radio.
All right, we are back. Falcons Central Radio Show. We wanted to finish up this episode talking about some recent news with the Falcons. I believe Scott has some insights to share on this stadium deal, which I believe the deadline is this Thursday, where the Falcons basically a self-imposed deadline, which I guess they could move if they wanted to, but I don't know, for when they could pick the site for the stadium.
They could move it, or the EPA studies that they're trying to do could move it for them, and they've already done a couple spots, and they're like, yeah, we can already tell you right now the south side is not where you want to put the stadium. The EPA studies have already said that. That means they've done 60-foot borings, at least a couple of hand augers, to look at the site, geologically, if you will. They did a geologic survey. They've done a lot of work on the site already. If the EPA study is saying, hey, we can't use this site, and then you've got the churches being all crazy and greedy, asking for $25 million when their site's only worth $1.2 million, and the latest offer is only $15 million. I mean, you're asking for another 65%. That's not happening. Not with the way Arthur Blank thinks. He's a businessman. You're not a businessman if you give up an extra 65% onto your next offer. So the churches can go, deal with their own little thing and take no money, while the stadium can be built on the north site, which is much more feasible, and they can build a giant parking garage, put a tailgate area on top, then put the stadium in the center of that giant tailgate area. That's what I think they should do. I think it'd be the best use of the land, the best use of the money. And for $1 billion, you could have a pretty badass setup. And honestly, it's a better site because it's closer. It may not be close to 3 MARTA stations, but it's close to, 2 MARTA stations. And the parking availability there is way better as it is. It's just the difference between building it, for the 3 to 4 years that you're building it, parking at games is going to be horrible. It is going to be probably the worst thing ever.
You're talking about at the south side or the north
No,
side?
if you build it on the north side.
I appreciate the insight on the EPA stuff because that stuff I had no idea about. Yeah, with the stadium, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. Some of it does seem like they're like, oh, we're good with building on either site. We don't really care either way, which is kind of what the Falcons have been saying. And so if that's the case, then we should find out on Thursday if they're still having the snag with the churches on the south side. They can't agree to a deal. And, as you said about the EPA stuff, then we should find out on Thursday that they're building the north side. But, part of me, and again, this is me being a little cynical, maybe they really do want to build on the south side and they're just using we don't really care which one we do as a negotiating tactic. So we'll see how that plays out.
It could be a negotiating tactic, but when a feasibility study comes back and says that kind of stuff, you kind of just have to go with it. Because that's engineers going in and saying, hey, this south site, it's too small. You don't have the right amount of land. You don't, the sites that you're going to pay for, it's going to cost too much money. Let's put it this way. Would you like to spend $50 million acquiring all the land that it's going to take and have a smaller site by about 30%? Or do you want to spend zero money and have the bigger site?
Yeah, I think the choice is obvious.
I'm going to take the bigger site.
Yeah.
And just call it and say, you know what? I've got the bigger site. I'm happy. I don't really, it's like I've got a bigger site and we don't have to spend any money. So we can spend that extra $50 million into actual stuff that could benefit the fans as opposed to purchasing land rights and destroying 2 historic black churches that obviously don't want to move. Go with the north site, make people happier, maybe even in a crazy thought with that $50 million, set up a direct MARTA line, just like a one-stop train that goes under the stadium back and forth to, the next station. And just do it that way. Get off at the North Avenue station and then go down a level and boom, there's your MARTA line straight to the stadium.
Makes sense. Makes me think you studied something about engineering when you were in school.
That's exactly what I studied.
Yeah.
Because I was a civil engineering major at Citadel. I've worked in multiple aspects of it in college, and when the crash happened, there are guys who graduated a year before me who don't have jobs right now.
Mm.
I wish that there was the ability to get a job in that field, but I'm not really as worried about it. I will eventually find something that I enjoy as opposed to my current day job, which is friggin' horrible.
Right.
And my annoying British boss with his curry fetish.
Okay. I'm sure that makes an interesting smell at work.
Oh, it smells awful.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, you're lucky.
Yeah, my job smells like bleach because I work at schools and they're always bleaching tables to disinfect them.
You're a teacher?
Not technically, no, but I work for a program that deals with teachers.
So you do the teaching, but not to the kids?
No, I basically research teachers, basically, and observe teachers.
So either way, you still don't really have to deal with the kids?
Pretty much.
Nice. Not that I don't like kids, I don't have patience, and being a teacher is 100% patience.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
I don't know how my sister does it because she doesn't have any patience either.
Yeah. Well, I guess we haven't really talked about it on this show, but since the last show, I believe, Matt Ryan did sign his contract extension. It seems like if you're a Falcon fan, you're jumping for joy, and if you're not a Falcon fan, you're like, oh my God, I can't believe they paid Matt Ryan. So since both Scott and I consider ourselves Falcon fans, I guess it's our duty to tell all the non-Falcon fans why they're dumb for thinking that the Falcons were dumb for paying Matt Ryan, because the Falcons were very, very smart in paying Matt Ryan his monster contract.
Let's put it this way.
Okay.
Let's put it this way. You got a team that, before Matt Ryan, they're pretty shitty.
Yes.
For use of a better word. That's the only way you can put it. They suck.
Pretty much.
Before Matt Ryan. Before Thomas Dimitroff. Before Mike Smith. And you can always people always try to make the argument, it's because of Julio Jones and Tony Gonzalez and Roddy White. Wait, why are you going to penalize a guy because his GM is smart enough to say, hey, I've got this guy with a really good arm. Let me give him some guys to throw it to. You can't penalize him for that.
Correct.
He walked into a good GM.
It's like saying Joe Montana's not good because he had Jerry Rice.
Exactly.
No one says,
Or like saying Peyton Manning's not good because he had Marvin Harrison and Reggie Wayne and Marcus Pollard and
Dallas Clark. Yeah, I know
that's the name. Yeah. So or like Tom Brady's not good because he's got Gronk and he had Hernandez, and he had Randy Moss and all these other great receivers. It's like, he may not have had like 3 to 4 top of the line receivers, but he always had above average receivers.
Yes. Wes Welker and Randy Moss would certainly, and Deion Branch, not an all-time great, but I'm talking like
the Brandon Lloyds and the Deion Branches and like the David Givenses of the world. They're not all pros, but they're not shit either. They're above average starters in the NFL.
Certainly. Yeah, I think, the thing that people have to understand is, right, I think most people do understand this, but you got to have a quarterback if you want to win championships. All right, unless you're going to have, one of the greatest defense of all times, like the 2000 Ravens, which the Falcons currently don't have, and, it takes a long time to build that type of defense. You need a quarterback.
Mark Sanchez could have won with that 2000 Ravens defense.
Yeah, certainly one of probably the 3 or 4 best defenses of all time in 8 years of the NFL. So that tells you right there.
Yeah.
So you need a quarterback, and Matt Ryan is the caliber of quarterback where it's foreseeable to see him being able to play at a fairly high level, comparable to current stars like Drew Brees and Peyton Manning and even a guy like Brett Favre, well into his 30s, 35, 36, 37, 38, maybe even longer. And so Matt Ryan's currently 27, 28 years old. So that means potentially he could play another decade. And he's a good quarterback. He may not be the world's greatest quarterback, but he's going to definitely put the Falcons in a position where they can compete for Super Bowls over the next decade.
And people don't realize this, but a quarterback's prime is 29, 30, 31. That is a quarterback's prime years.
Exactly.
Matt Ryan's 26, 27, He hasn't even hit that yet.
It's like basically what are you paying for? We're paying $103 million so we can be a Super Bowl contender for the next decade. If you can basically make that agreement, I think, no GM, no owner in the league would not make that deal. The Browns would kill for that. The Raiders would kill for that. The Jets would kill for that. The Rams, the Jaguars, they would basically, we'll pay $200 million just so we can possibly compete for, a Super Bowl title in the next decade. What is that worth? It's worth, it's certainly worth $103.75 million. So, all the people that say, Matt Ryan's not worth it because, all the other $100 million quarterbacks have all won Super Bowls already. Okay. So Matt Ryan hasn't won his Super Bowl yet. If and when he wins it in the future, it'll certainly justify the money that we pay now. The Falcons had to pay before the Super Bowl as opposed to after the Super Bowl.
And if you look at it, Joe Flacco should have been paid last year. But the Ravens were stupid about $1 million in the last year of the deal and walked away. Mm-hmm. What?
Yeah. And you can make the argument Matt Ryan should have been paid last year. You know, I think the Falcons knew that, were they going to get rid of him?
They weren't going to get rid of him, but you always wait a little bit for that kind of stuff.
I think when you know the guy's a franchise quarterback, you pay him as soon as you know that. Like, I think, the minute that RG3 and Andrew Luck and Russell Wilson can sign new deals, which is in 2 years, I think their respective teams should pay them, lock them up. Why wait? If you know a guy's a franchise guy, pay him. And if you can get him for $80 million over 5 years as opposed to $100 million over 5 years, I think that's worth it.
Again, he's worth it. Matt Ryan's definitely worth the contract. They were smart waiting. They really are.
Okay.
I do think that the Falcons paid just a little too much. But again, you're paying for future performance. You don't pay for past performance. You pay for what you think the guy can do. You pay for what you think you're going to have him do in the future. If the Falcons win the Super Bowl this year.
Yeah. No one's going to be talking about, Matt Ryan's, whatever is being overpaid. That's what it's about. Yeah, and, when you're Drew Brees and you're 34 years old, yeah, you're paying for past performance. But when you're Matt Ryan and you're 27 or whatever Matt Ryan is, you're paying for future performance. No one's going to be as good, from age 22 to 27 as they are going to be from 27 to 32, especially at the quarterback position. Because as you said, that's that age that Matt Ryan's coming in is the prime of his career.
It's the prime of his career, and it is by far the year that you want him to. This is the year that you want to make sure he's locked up. He's got all the right weapons. He's got a defense that is finally looking like it's ready to break out and be great. You just got to go for it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you just got to get it taken care of and don't let him. This is the year he's supposed to break out. So why wouldn't you pay him before it? Then he breaks out, has this, 4,700-yard passing season. Falcons at least get to another NFC title game, if not the Super Bowl. More than worth it, More than worth it.
Mm-hmm.
Even if his career is what Donovan McNabb's was, one Super Bowl appearance, he'll still be worth the money.
Yeah. I think that's I think that would be underestimating Matt Ryan's career. I think he would be a much better quarterback than Donovan McNabb.
Oh, I agree. I completely agree. Even if he was Peyton Manning without the Super Bowl, it's a much better career.
Yeah, I think worst case scenario for Matt Ryan is better than, Donovan McNabb, but I understand exactly what you're saying.
On the bright side, apparently there was $2 to $3 million worth of cap space freed up from the deal for this year.
Oh, really? Yeah, I heard that his base salary is now $9.6 million, which is down from 10, and then with the $2 million in bonus money that was prorated, so I guess that would be I don't know. If you know,
the $2 million in bonus money apparently got prorated over the 6 years of the deal. So it's like trying to do the math in my head and it's not really working.
Yeah, I understand.
It's tough math. So 6 divided by 6. So essentially $330,000 in addition. $2.1 million is what they added to the cap this year, if that's the exact details. And then next year's signing bonus or next year's option bonus was what the signing bonus really is.
Mm-hmm.
He's worth it.
Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully we'll hear some more explicit details in the upcoming week so we can talk more about it on next week's show. But right now we're just hearing like snippets of what's coming out with the deal.
I just want it to pop into the NFLPA database and I'll have the exact deal put up on my cap sheet.
Yep.
He's also one of just 2 players signed through 2018. Guess who the other one is?
Sam Baker?
Yep.
Yeah.
And just one of 3 signed through 2017. The other being William Moore.
Okay.
So either the Falcons are going to go really, really, really good, or it's going to go really, really, really bad, depending on how the next few drafts go and who they keep. Because who they keep matters more than some of the other stuff.
Well, we know one player they're going to keep, and it'll be, I'm hoping that they sign him, come February or whatever when the season's over. He's the first priority next offseason, and that's going to be Julio Jones, because he'll finally be eligible to get a contract extension, because one of the parts of the new CBA that was signed after the lockout was that rookies can't get contract extensions until after they've completed 3 seasons. So that will be Julio Jones after this season, and he's going to make a lot of money.
And the Falcons have all the cap space to do it.
It wouldn't surprise me if he also winds up getting $100 million. Because the thing about Julio Jones is he's so young, the Falcons could basically hey, you want an 8-9 year deal? Because you pretty much have a receiver like him could play well, till he's 35
not even
or
25 yet.
Yeah, so it's hey, you want 9 years, I don't know, $100 million, and whatever the math is, the going rate, I guess, is $13-14 million a year for a wide receiver like him.
So, hell yeah, give him $100 million over 9 years, and he'd probably be like, all right, let's go, let's recruit, and then he'll go out and be like, hey, Jimmy Graham, come on, how insane would that offense be? Jimmy Graham, Julio Jones, Roddy White. If Levine Toilolo actually steps up.
Is Jimmy Graham a free agent next year?
Jimmy Graham is a free agent next year, and the Saints don't exactly have a ton of cap room.
Yeah, I'm sure they're gonna find a way to keep Jimmy Graham. I would be shocked if they let him go. That would be a major, major, major blow to the Saints. I'm kind of rooting for it because of that reason, but yeah, that would be an interesting move.
I think we could consider it a trade, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the Saints currently have $124.2 million committed to next year's cap. The Falcons currently have $107 committed to next year's cap. And next year's cap is supposed to be $126 million. So that the Saints are surprisingly under it right now, which is rare for them. They normally just don't understand restructures or money, period. And they could cut Roman Harper and save some money, which they probably should do, because Roman Harper blows.
That he does. Yeah, they probably end up cutting a bunch of guys.
Because
a lot of their guys blow.
I think they should cut Curtis Lofton, too.
Vilma.
That's
Will
being
Smith.
addictive. They should cut Vilma, but Vilma's in his last year.
Okay.
Will Smith is in his last year. These guys aren't going back to the Saints. These guys are... Those two are, hey, it's your last year, and then you're going to retire, right? Will Smith's $8 million cap hit. Jonathan Vilma's misguided, $4 million cap hit. Ben Grubbs makes the money because he's worth it, but, Malcolm Jenkins makes too much money. Well, I mean, a lot of their guys actually make decent salaries now, but you could say last year they're just horrible with their cap. But they do pay Jari Evans $11 and Ben Grubbs $9 next year. $20 million on 2 guards is insane.
Yeah, it is.
But enough about the Satans. As far as camp is concerned, it looks like Brian Banks is going to end up on that roster. Once the pads got thrown on, he went from man to monster, which he needed to. Mm-hmm. And that's just going based off reports that I've seen. So
yeah, we're less than a week in, and I still feel pretty good about the players I picked to make the roster. I think
the only one I'm not feeling on mine is Tim Toon.
Yeah, Yeah.
You know?
Well, he got picked up by the Saints today, so. Well, if you wind up getting 52 out of 53, I don't think that's any room to complain. So.
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to be that accurate. I wish. Hell, if I could get 52 out of 53, then I should be working for a multinational corporation and not, running my own site.
Yeah.
Because I hate doing the back end.
Yeah.
No, WordPress is a pain in the butt, but someone's got to do it. Editing's just as bad, but again, someone's got to do it. Even us engineers with our poor grammar.
Well, that's going to be this week's show. You can find us as usual on Twitter. I am at FalcFans. Scott is at Scott Carasik. We do accept any questions that you guys wish to ask us.
As well as any donations.
To the Get Scott Civil Engineering Job Fund. So
I was thinking the United Chicken Sandwich Fund.
Okay.
Get everybody a chicken sandwich. United People's Chicken Sandwich Fund.
Yeah. Speaking of donating money, I believe Pro Football Central will be having a store where people can buy T-shirts and other paraphernalia in the coming days or weeks. So look out for that.
And we got a fathead contest. You got to follow Pro Football Central, or is it at PF Central?
I believe it's at PF Central. Yeah.
At PF Central. Have to follow that account. Have to follow our show's account, and then you have to follow at Fathead. And then I'm just gonna pick the best looking blonde to earn the Fathead. Now, we'll actually do it by random. I'll just magically scroll down and just point at the screen, and whoever gets it gets it.
Yeah.
That, not high tech with the method, but gotta do what you gotta do sometimes.
Yeah, that's how it goes. Eeny, meeny, miny, moe.
Eeny, meeny, miny, moe. Anyway, thanks for listening again, and we'll hear you again next week.
All right.
This has been a presentation of the Pro Football Central Network. For news, blogs, highlights, and more, log on to ProFootballCentral.com.
Gotcha.